I knew I wanted to be in real estate in some shape or form, right? So I was like, okay, where do I start? I had made some connections, being a former Dallas Cowboy, still living in the Dallas area. So I was like, I knew a few people. One of my buddies, he owns a real estate brokerage, and he's like, hey, why don't you come try it out, come work for me. I said, okay, might be an entry point. So I actually got my real estate license and went to work as a residential agent for a little bit. Figured out pretty fast that's not for me. It wasn't my cup of tea, which is good, right? It's at least During the same time, I started buying my first duplex, running the numbers. I'm starting to hire some random contractors to fix some things up. I learned it's like, okay, on the investment side of things, that is something that gets me excited. That's something like I really could see myself. And that's really the starting point for me, where I said like, okay, being an agent isn't for me, but on the investment side, that's something I could see a potential. And then that's what I did, right? And then I ran with that.
Welcome to Rigs to Riches. I'm Casey Gregersen, engineer turned investor, family man, and your guide to building real estate wealth the smart way. If you're out there pulling long shifts, running teams, or just flying back from the rig or that long business trip just in time for that family dinner, you're in the right place. Each week, I sit down with guests who walk the walk. Some of these are operators doing flips, rentals, multifamily, creative deals, buying businesses, and others are professionals who will help you actually understand things like taxes, underwriting, or financing, and much more, so that you can invest wisely, even if you're short on time. Whether you're looking for your first deal or trying to buy back your time, we've got you covered.
Welcome back to Rigs to Riches, where we talk freedom, family, and flipping the script on your finances. If you guys have been with us before or listened to some of my previous podcasts, you got to hear Mark Nzeocha, former Wyoming Cowboy, former Dallas Cowboy, former San Francisco 49er. Man, last time we talked, it was one of my favorite episodes because we got to talk about how Mark made that transition from the NFL to now investing and doing deals in real estate. And we talked a lot about like some of those first duplexes he was buying. So we're going to be able to catch up on some of that stuff today and see where he's gone. Because I think the most exciting thing I think Mark's going to bring to you guys today, because I'm sure some of you are going to be like, oh man, I didn't come from an NFL salary, but what Mark's done is Mark has taken action, and he was learning it while he was doing his W-2 job, which is really cool. We're going to talk about that today. Just like a lot of our other listeners who are probably listening to this podcast, still working their W-2 with dreams of eventually leaving it and doing it full time. So Mark's a good example. We're going to share that today. But anyway, Mark, awesome to have you back, man. What's new up there in Dallas?
First of all, Casey, appreciate you having me on again. What an intro. I appreciate the flowers there. But yeah, no, nothing much is new. Still grinding away, finding deals, looking at deals all day, every day, and, making it happen, trying to make it happen in the real estate world.
Awesome, man. When so many places to start, but let's give the listeners kind of a summary. Talk about when you first started thinking about real estate, right? Because as I just alluded to, I remember you telling me conversations like in the locker room, thinking about getting into real estate, but kind of walk me through before you ended up leaving your W-2.
To summarize, so I played in the NFL for 7 years. My last year, I officially decided to hang up the cleats by beginning of 2023. And yeah, to your point, real estate's kind of always been something, that was fascinating to me early on. That must have been 2015, 16 when I first kind of got into it. And as cliche as it sounds, I kind of got into all those HGTV shows. That kind of got me hooked. I was like, oh my God, that'd be so cool to flip a house, Obviously being oblivious to the process, but always, was fascinated by the before and afters, by the process of taking something that might be ugly to some and really seeing the vision and turning it into something beautiful and someone would appreciate. That always is something that just kind of caught me. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot of guys who are kind of interested in that as well in the athlete realm, but it took until I actually was retired to actually, to make that leap and actually take action. Before that was a lot of talk. It was locker room talk. Hey, this would be cool, and rentals and multifamily and all that stuff. It was all cool, and we talked about that quite a bit. But yeah, it took until 2023 after I was officially done to take that official first step, and actually I bought my first rental property back then. And yeah, haven't looked back since, and just been trying to growing and scaling it ever since.
Love it. Well, cool. We'll share one of the water cooler stories we'll share. And I think this is so cool because, again, our listeners are probably talking about this in their W-2, maybe in their lunch break or whatever. But share some of those stories in NFL locker rooms about dreaming of doing real estate.
Right. The thing is, in an NFL locker room, obviously there's all sorts of different salaries. There's the backup salary, there's the barely being on the roster type of guy salary, and then there's obviously the superstars. And I remember one specific conversation I had. It was in the sauna, actually, with Trent Williams. If people who don't know him, he's the starting left tackle for the 49ers. Obviously had a great career, very successful, very wealthy. And yeah, he talked about having multifamily houses. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, what kind? Like, where at? It's like, oh yeah, I just closed on my fifth 100-unit complex. I was like, oh wow. So I was like, okay, that's a little different from what I'm looking at. But just to see that everyone kind of is, at a different stage, but everyone is at some level wants to invest in real estate, and that kind of got me going, got the wheels turning. And yeah, I don't know, that's kind of like how it all started for me, that I say, okay, I got to take action. Like, it's like whoever you talk to at whatever level, it's like, hey, you just got to jump in, right? And then, like I said, that was kind of the trigger to eventually saying, okay, let's do this as well.
Yeah, so cool, man. And we were talking before, but I want you to go a little bit more into detail on like why real estate, because again, you guys, sounds like it was a common theme you had with multiple other players and just other people that were like, hey, it wasn't like everybody going to Bitcoin or something. It would
right. I mean, that was a conversation too, but that's a talk for another day. But Kyle Juszczyk, he's a fullback still for the 49ers as well. He was, Harvard grad, smart guy. He kind of early on told me too about his investments. And, I think he was in the Airbnb space, or kind of fixer-uppers, but long-term, buy and hold. He was kind of the one that's like, hey, kind of showed me even his numbers. It was very transparent, which was cool, but just the passive income, and I was always very aware that the NFL is a great stepping stone, but it can also be, it can be over at any point in time. Nothing is guaranteed, especially in the NFL. So to me, it was important to find something that could sustain my lifestyle after football, right? So early on, I was like, okay, what can I do to invest some of my money into cash flowing asset that would, generate income on the passive side, right? And that's really what got me into it. And yeah, I could name so many names, but there's a lot of teammates who kind of were thinking along the ways, but never really took action. That's the big thing. There's a lot of conversation going, but to finally pull the trigger, I mean, that's a whole different story. But yeah, that's kind of that was the main goal behind getting actually into real estate. Also I get a lot of fulfillment out of it too. Now doing flips and seeing the end product is great, but the main goal to begin with is let's create passive income and cash flow to, support the family.
Wow, great. So last one before we get into kind of the real estate journey. Again, back still, you're playing in the league, right? Playing in, week out. You just mentioned there were a lot of people talking about it, but not everybody taking action. And again, I think this answer will relate to anybody in any industry. But what do you think was the difference between the guys talking about it to the guys that actually did it and took action?
That's a great question. I think a lot of indecisiveness, not really wanting to invest, but not being willing to put in the work of educating yourself. I think that was a big one. That was a big one for me at first. It's on the surface level, it sounds great, but I don't know anything about it. I don't have a mentor, someone I could reach out to and say, hey, can you kind of talk me through this? Can you kind of take me under your wing and kind of maybe show me this business a little bit? I think that plays a role into it. And then just also being preoccupied. A season takes a lot out of you, right? So it's hard to really focus on anything else while you're still active, and I think that is one of my biggest, on quote unquote regrets, to not earlier jump in, right? Always saying, okay, I'm still playing, I'm still active. You can still in the offseason, you have plenty of time to educate yourself or take some real estate classes or go to meetings and all that. That is still an option. But I feel for a lot of people, it's just hey, I'm 100% focused on ball right now. Let's focus about, after football later.
Yeah. Love that though. You have the similar regrets as everybody else, right? I wish I would have started sooner, everything you had going on. What it is. That's good. Okay. So let's talk about the transition, right? You retired. I'm curious on your decision of how you knew, what, I'm going all in. I'm going to start doing this versus maybe what other people would do. Maybe other people would have just coasted, or maybe other people are I got to go get a regular W-2 job. But how does your decision come into play?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to be in real estate in some shape or form, right? So I was like, okay, where do I start? I had made some connections, being a former Dallas Cowboy, still living in the Dallas area. So I was like, I knew a few people. One of my buddies, he owns a real estate brokerage, and he's like, hey, why don't you come try it out, come work for me. I said, okay, might be an entry point. So I actually got my real estate license and went to work as a residential agent for a little bit. Figured out pretty fast within like 6 months or so that's not for me. It wasn't my cup of tea, which is good, right? It's at least but during the same time, I started buying my first duplex and, running the numbers, starting to hire some random contractors to fix some things up. I learned it's like, okay, on the investment side of things, that is something that gets me excited. That is something like I really could see myself. And that's really the starting point for me, where I said like, okay, being an agent isn't for me, but on the investment side, that's something I could see a potential. And then that's what I did, right? And then I ran with that.
Nice, man. And then from there, did you immediately start buying rentals, or when did that come into play?
Yeah, no, that was actually during the same time frame. During the first 6 months, while I was an agent, I bought my first rental. Like I said, I started doing some rehab work on that. That's where I met some of my contractors, and some of them I still work with today. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of like, and I'm telling you how it is. Like it was the whole, still from the back of my mind 5 years prior, to like the HGTV mindset of like, man, I want to fix something up. I want to make something pretty out of it. And I eventually just pulled the trigger. Like, I honestly, and Casey, I'm not lying, like I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about numbers, how to run cap rate, none of that. ROI.
I remember it.
It's just like, hey, this is a long-term hold. It was a wholesale deal. Did the numbers make sense? Not really, probably. But as long as you hold it long enough, eventually you be okay. Like, and that's what I did. And honestly,
That's
looking
so
back,
cool.
I still have that property. It's been probably 3 years now, and it's still good.
Yes. This is such a cool story, Mark. I remember, again, Mark was reaching out and he was like, hey, Casey, what do you think? You were asking me like, hey, what do you think about these wholesalers? What do you think about this deal?
Right.
What I loved about your perspective was you're like, you know what, Casey, as long as if I create any value out in this thing, I think you were probably like, that's bonus, right? I could hold this asset just purely as a buy and hold investment. And if that's the only way I win, I still win, right? But you probably, I'm assuming, because you created value, you won in other ways.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's obviously the name of the game too. Obviously, I live in an area that has been, at least for the last, I don't know how many years, but it's been appreciating, right? It's a very popular, booming area. So, and that was my mindset too. It's like, as long as I don't buy a terrible deal and, I do some improvements to it, I'll be okay in the long run. It's not like I'm going to try to flip this property. No, it's going to be a buy and hold. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. And then funny thing is, a few months later, after I had my renters in there, I got it appraised, and it appraised for way more than I thought. And I used the DSCR loan and pulled all the cash I had put into it back out. So it was actually a big win. So I still have a cash flow asset, and yeah, I'm in it for no money. So that was a great example of the BRRRR strategy right there.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. What I love too, Mark, is you took that passion. You've said it a couple times about like the value, or just maybe the intrinsic part that you loved about fixing up a property and seeing the transformation. But you weren't just like, I'm just going to be a fix and flipper. You're like, I know long-term wealth is built through buy and hold. So you combine 100%. The two, which you talked about the BRRRR strategy, right? You're creating value, refinancing, and keeping the asset. Wow. So keep walking through, like, how have you kind of built your portfolio in those 3 years doing that?
Right. I just bought a couple more along the way, and kind of just the numbers look better on duplexes, multifamily. So I bought a couple more duplexes along the way. But then eventually I got to the point, it's like, hey, I really want to try to do a fix and flip. And didn't really know where to start. I talked to a couple of my realtor friends. I said, yeah, I can look for you. Like, Dallas is a good area to flip. In the North Dallas area, there's some higher end homes, and I wanted to get into the higher end homes just for the fact that there's less competition. And then that was, when was that? Like, I flipped my first home. It's only about a year and a half ago, and I kid you not, that first flip, it was, I mean, oh my goodness, it was unreal. Like, and it was one of those things I just jumped in. She said, hey, the realtor's like, hey, there's a good spread on it, make some money. It was in an area where the ARV is probably in the million plus, and that was my very first flip.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a big one with a rehab budget of like over $200,000. And I'm talking moving wall. I'm talking about rewiring the whole house, replumbing. It was a cast iron plumbing, so I had to replumb it with PVC piping, the whole 9 yards. Like, it was a 4-month project. At the end of the day, I mean, I was lucky because through the process, I met my now business partner. Yeah, it was one of those things. It was the best learning experience I could have had, because I was thrown in the fire. It was a huge project, and yeah, we ended up. I made a little bit of money, not a lot, to be honest. It was very risky for how high a price point it was and for how much money I put in. But the learning is just like priceless. So that's kind of how that story went. And then, yeah, now we're actually doing flips as a bread and butter. Don't get me wrong, like the rental side is still very, very much the plan for the long term. But right now, the market here, like we just talked about it, high property taxes, high insurance rates. The buy and hold in rental market in Dallas is not the greatest, or Texas in general. So we kind of focusing on the fix and flips right now, and I've actually decided just recently to get out of state with the rentals and build a rental portfolio out of state.
Cool, man. Let's dig in more there. We were talking beforehand about. Yeah, we both. So I'm in Houston. Mark's obviously up in Dallas, and we're seeing these same challenges, right, of making buy and holds work and wondering about sustainability. Great, we've gotten great appreciation, which I do love what you're doing. I love you're taking advantage of the flips, and you've learned a ton there. But yeah, talk about like what's driving you to go look in other markets, and what do you actually. I want the listeners to put themselves in your shoes right now, living in Dallas. You mentioned Alabama, but how are you starting to get comfortable with getting outside of the state?
Yeah, like you said, I've been looking into investing in Alabama just for this. There's a few factors. I mean, the entry point is way lower. Property taxes, insurance, much lower. It's still in close enough proximity. If something would have happened, I could be there, right? And then the reason I really got into that market is I've been approached by a business partner about the potential of investing into a Section 8 housing, which is, government substituted housing for lower income people, which is a huge market. And we're talking in Alabama, you can buy houses for anywhere between, I've been researching from like 30,000 up to 80,000, maybe 100,000 for 3-4 bedroom house, right? And on that Section 8, and on the Section 8 program, you see rents going for $1,400 for $100,000 investment, right? So, the numbers just make sense. But, out of state, in case you know that best, like if you invest out of state, you can't do it without the right team in place. And I've been looking into this process for a while, and I've been vetting different people. And I've actually joined this training program with this guy who's been doing it for a number of years, and he has everything in place, from the realtors to the lenders to the construction crew. Like, you have to have rock solid team in place, otherwise out of state doesn't work. And like just going through the process of vetting them and educating myself and watching hours and hours of YouTube videos and talking to people, I felt comfortable enough to go that step and joined his program and now actively looking to close on my first deal down there.
Man, cool. I love how you talk go a little bit further though, Mark, on you mentioned like investing out of state and having a good operator. What have you kind of looked for, and how are you kind of trying to mitigate that risk?
To me, it comes down to like, obviously, track record. It comes down to like, how long you've been doing the experience and all that. But I'm I'm a people person, so how does the interaction between us work, right? Like, I had multiple conversations, Zoom calls with him, and just talk me through your process. Just what type of person are you, right? Are you high morals? Like, just what kind of guy are you? And that is important to me, someone I'm doing business with. I don't want to do business with anyone, with everyone, it's got to be a match, right? And obviously I got to be a match as well, that goes both ways. And those are definitely big factors for me. And I think it was just something that was a good match, from my side. And I think he agreed with that. And so we decided to go ahead and do that. And I think, I don't know, that's something I definitely prioritize in business.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go a different direction on this, but to kind of piggyback off this, as far as I feel like you're now taking bigger moves and a little bit more risk. Mm-hmm. So if you guys do go back, I'll be sure and put the link in the show notes of my first podcast with Mark. Mark's an incredibly dynamic guy. We could go for 2 hours, but I'll give you the cliff notes. Again, he grew up in Germany, right? Came to Wyoming, played football, again, had the NFL career. But I remember you saying, when you first while you're still in the NFL and when you first started, you were pretty conservative with your investments.
Oh yeah.
Right. In general. Right. So what's kind of helped you? What's kind of shifted that and caused you to be like, hey, what flipped the switch for you to be like, hey, now I'm going to go take some bigger moves?
That's a great question because it's like nowadays, man, like it's just back then it was like, man, I can't have debt. I don't, very, to your point, very conservative. And now if I think about it right now, I have literally millions of dollars in debt right now with all the houses we have out there. It's just like one of those things I feel like you learn and you learn to take calculated risk, right? But yeah, just over the time experience because I would still have probably the majority of my money in the stock market. I gotta be honest there too. But I also max out the amount of money I can borrow against my money in the market, right? Because I can borrow against my own money again a way better rate than any bank could ever give me. And it's just became one of those things that I don't want to trust just on the market. I want to be in control of my own, money and my own wealth and creating something. So it's just something I learned. I don't have a better answer, but it's like, it's really one of those things. It's like you trust in your own ability. You trust in doing a great job and flipping this home or like making sure you buy at the right price, get a renter in and being able to, do a DSCR loan or a cash out refi and pull that money back out and then pay back that loan, right? You just trust in your ability to create that value. I think that'd be a good answer.
Yeah. Love it. And I think too, just knowing you, Mark, it's the confidence, right? When you were learning it, but then you mentioned you went through the battles. You went through the school of hard knocks on that flip you mentioned
100%.
where you learned it. Right. But now you had confidence, you've done the deals. Right. I assume just like being on the playing field, right? As you got more confidence, the player you became. And now you're doing big moves in the investment space. So love it, dude. Cool. I wanted to ask you this one though. What do you feel like, and maybe I answered it for you, but I'm sure you got other ones. What do you feel like, because this is again, anybody's W-2, like there's a lot of things I've taken from my career at Shell, right? It was a very process driven company. And I've implemented a lot of that into my investing career and my company. But what's kind of one of the biggest takeaways you took from the NFL that you now apply today in real estate?
Right. Oh, damn. Yeah, it's a great question. Very much like to your point, it's a process-driven league. It is one that if you do not put in the work, someone is behind you trying to take your job from you, right? So it's like, it's just a relentless work ethic to get better, right? And do never be complacent. So I'm like, very relentless and very restless if I don't have something to do, right? So every day is structured where I'm like, okay, first couple hours of the day, I'm either networking or I'm looking at deals. I evaluate deals, right? So it's very much like, hey, I have to have a process in place. Otherwise, there's the saying like athletes do, it's like you either get better or you get worse, right? So I'm always trying to stay ahead of the ball, right? And trying to get better that way.
Heck yeah. I should have known. I figured that was the answer. I love it, man. Right. Talk too about your routine now, right? You're out of the league. You're still in great shape though. I'm assuming it's the same kind of routine from workouts. You mentioned prepping, training,
right?
Or training your brain more so now, but talk me through your daily routine.
Yeah. I'm sure you're the same way. Like, I need to work out just to keep my, sanity. Just like, with the kids, I have 3 kids now. So there's a lot going on. So like, if I get up at 5 a.m, I just have a few hours to myself. Nice little routine in the morning. I hit the workout. Thankfully, I have a home gym, so I just have to step out in the garage and, get my workout in. Then about 7, the kids wake up. I have I have about an hour, family time. And then I jump in the office and then I have stuff scheduled throughout the day, like from meetings to check the job site. What else do I do? A lot of like LinkedIn, connect with local, lenders, other investors, or you may be like, I'm just trying to like just grow myself in this business and be getting deeper into this Dallas market in any way I can.
Man, love it.
That's
well, good.
Today. Yeah.
And it seems simple to me, people like me and Mark, but if you guys are listening to this and you're not, like Mark just hit on it, and I'm going to repeat it. He mentioned that time from 5 a.m. to what time your kids wake up, Mark?
About 7.
7? Yeah, me too. That's the like sacred. Isn't that one of the best times of the day?
Literally.
Not that we don't love our kids, but like 5 to 7, it's like our time to get ahead. And I'm sure you're probably ready to be a dad at 7 a.m. and you've got that stuff behind you.
Absolutely.
I love it, man. Yeah. One of the biggest life hacks.
No doubt. But yeah, that's it. And then, I do a lot involved with the kiddos. I coach the kids' sport, my son's soccer team and my older son's flag football team. I do all that stuff too, which is awesome. I know you talk about this, like the freedom real estate gives you. Love that part of it. So you can kind of be, just structure your day the way you want it. And those are big reasons too. I want to be in this field just so I can be there for my kids and the sports, which is, a big passion of the whole family is big into sports.
Heck yeah, man. man, we can resonate with that big time. And I'm sure a lot of other people are, right? Everyone's got kids, whether it's their sporting events or whatever they want to be there for. There's stuff they want to be there for, right? And again, that's
Absolutely.
why we do this podcast. We talk about creating that. So, man, another one, Mark, I think you're really great to answer this question, right? Kind of talk about the balance or maybe the diversification you have in your portfolio. Because again, I remember talking to you when you're in the league, it was more focused in maybe the stock market, other ways, not as much real estate. But what's that look like today? Because you've got, and you mentioned what I love that you're doing is you're leveraging against your market, your stock, and your portfolio to buy more real estate. But what's your kind of mix look like?
That's a great question. If I would have to put a number on it, I might be deeper into real estate right now. We only
even the philosophy, tell me your philosophy. Because I think people who listen to this, they're going to they probably got all their money in the market maybe right now and nothing in real estate, or maybe they have a balance, but what's your philosophy?
To me, it's just for, especially in the market I invest in. I think it's as hard as it is. I think it's more stable. I really do believe so. Obviously we just got hit with these tariffs and stuff like that. It's just not affected. It doesn't affect real estate the way the stock market does. An opinion doesn't affect the housing market as the real estate as the stock market does. Right? It's a lot of these huge swings come based off projections and opinions a lot of times, which is like, hey. Real estate, it's something I can touch. It is there. It is, for the most part, very stable. So that's something that was like, hey, I can wrap my mind around that, right? Versus the market, it's still very much, a part of our investment plan and strategy, but it's just something slower and slower where we twisting or not twisting, but moving towards the real estate because the more confident and the more of, quote unquote, an expert I get about real estate, I feel more and more comfortable of putting the majority of my money behind that as well.
Yeah, man. Good. It's just a cool story for other people to go along that journey, man. So I appreciate you sharing that, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. Man.
I want to go back a little bit because you were talking about networking, right? And you've talked about Cowboys Club and some of the stuff you've done. What's that going to look like with you right now to build relationships? And because I love how I think that's one of the biggest reasons you've grown as well.
Yeah, and honestly, it's in the real estate business or in really any business, relationships are the most important thing, you only go as your team goes, or you only go as someone else goes who's already done this or mentors you. So it is, to me, it's big time, so I try to at least a couple times a week, get someone either on the phone, have a meeting, or, have a coffee date, lunch date, whatever it may be, and just talk. A lot of times it's not even about business. This is just about I mentioned earlier, I'm very much into the human aspect of this business too, right? So get to know other people who are in the same space and see hey, how can I potentially be of value to you, and maybe vice versa. And then you just build relationships, and then eventually you never know how that might be beneficial to both of you. So yeah, that is huge to me, in terms of banking, lending, even contractors, other potential business partners. No, that's a huge part of my daily routine of just reaching out to other people who are doing the same thing, or people I aspire to be because they're doing it on a higher level than I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And you mentioned partners, right? And you talked earlier about what you look for in a partner. You kind of mentioned just, are they a good person, sort of integrity? Right. But what are some other kind of ways that or maybe hacks you found about figuring out, because it sounds like you've created some great partnerships. How do you qualify them?
Right. So I have one main partner right now who is my, we flipping houses together. So it's a 50-50 partnership. We have an entity together and everything. And honestly, that was it just clicked. It just happened. In my first flip, the big one I talked about, I wouldn't have done this. I probably wouldn't even be in the industry anymore if it wasn't for him, because he was recommended by our lender. It's hey, I have another guy who's one of our best clients, and he does a ton of flips. It's why don't you have him look over this project for you? And he did. And, he kind of GC'd it a little bit, kind of helped me some layouts, because we moved all sorts of walls and all that. He kind of helped me out, and I say, hey, this is something that might work, right? Not only on the business side, but it's really we hang out, we talk, we're friends, we're buddies. It's just, that is almost as important to me as your expertise, right? Obviously, you need to know what you're doing, right? You gotta come with the know-how. You gotta come with the work ethic, because we can't be not on the same page when it comes to, hey, how much work we're putting in and where we want to take this business, right? It has to be something that aligns, and no, that between him and I, that just clicked. And we done some bigger projects where we actually brought in a third partner, and then we go through the same vetting process, you know, like there might be something we already worked with before and just happens that way too. So, yeah, like, I mean, definitely, you know, you got to know what you're doing in the field, but you also have to be, you know, from an integrity standpoint, you know, aligned.
You bet. And I feel like, if knowing you too, it's all about the long game. I just know, for example, with us, like me and Mark were talking years ago on maybe doing deals together in Wyoming. You're interested in that market, right? Because I think it was from fix and flips to buy and holds, right? To eventually, like, me and Mark stayed in touch on like deals we were doing, and eventually you ended up doing a deal with us on one of our bigger multifamily. But I feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's probably the consistency of getting to know somebody, seeing them show up, getting to see them doing deals over and over, and then eventually when timing's right, it's probably an easy decision, huh?
That's exactly what it is. And I'll tell you, with you especially, I just know your track record. You know, I know first of all, how long you've been doing, how well you've been doing it. And then this deal, I don't even know if you presented it to me, but, you know, I had my people look over it, but it was one of those things. It's like, I just wanted their sign off, because I already knew if that's a deal that you personally vouch for, that I can trust you, because I know you've been doing it, you've been putting in the hours to work, that it's something that's going to be successful. And that comes with, you know, with building relationships, right? With knowing someone over years and, you know, following their work and like just being able to count on someone in that way.
Yeah. And the last one, I'll just summarize: trust but verify, right? Mark trusted, but he used his professionals, his network to go verify, right?
Right.
That's a great tip.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Mark. All right. Well, see, before we get into our final questions, I want to ask you though, I remember we talked the first time a little bit about your purpose and like kind of where you're going with all this. Like, I want to hear a little bit more in your words. Like, what is your why? Why are you pushing? Because again, some people might have been like, hey, I've got enough money. I mean, you probably had enough money when you left to where you could live a modest life and keep doing your thing, right? But what is your purpose? What keeps you to drive and waking up every day, building, taking out leverage to magnify
Right. Right. Now, I think we kind of touched on that. It's just like just being never really not satisfied, but like don't want to be stagnant. Don't want to like always want to constantly improve myself, you know, learn something new. I think that is the huge driving factor. And then obviously it's my family, right? I have 3 little ones. I have a 6, a 4-year-old and almost 1-year-old. I also want to be a good role model to them, right? Like I don't want to be one of those dads who's like, you know, getting out of shape or like, you know, not doing something purposeful with their lives, right? So that was never a question to like, you know, just after football, just retire in that sense and just don't do anything. It was always like, hey, what's the next thing, right? Like I always see the NFL as a great stepping stone. It set us up very well, but that was never the plan to just have that on the resume, right? There was always something like, hey, what is the next step after that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't doubt it. Would not doubt it. Well, cool, Mark. This has been good. These last 4 questions, though, I'm really excited to hear your answers based on your perspective. So let's start off here. Number 1, if you lost it all today, what is the first thing you would do to start to build it back?
Oh, see, that's a deep one. Okay, put me on the spot. If I lost it all, so honestly, I would leverage the relationships I made over the years. You know, I think I built deep enough trust. We kind of touched on that, where I could hopefully get some sort of, you know, like, I don't know, a loan or whatever and start new. And I would stick to what I know, how to fix up a home, how to, you know, flip a home and just start that whole journey over. But I think the main thing is really like the relationships. Count on those people that you counted on along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You could take a lot away from you, but try to take away your relationships. And even if not, even if you did, you'd build them back the exact same way.
Right.
Love it. All right, cool. Number 2. What's one deal you'd never do again and why? And it doesn't have to be real estate. It could be any deal you've done.
Oh my God. Oh goodness. I mean, I had some deals where I actually lost money. Like it was just like a scam. So I don't know. I feel like I stick to real estate. I mean, I gotta say, knock on wood, like I haven't had like horror deal where everything went wrong. Like, yeah, have we lost money on a couple deals? Absolutely. You know, you can't avoid that. You know, you can't win them all. But I think there was a few deals where I kind of like my contractor, for whatever reason, he wasn't available, and then I hired someone that I didn't know, I hadn't vetted, just hired him cheap because, you know, we're already over budget, and then I got absolutely screwed. You know, there's a couple times where they like run off with the deposit money, right? Stuff like that. So I can't pinpoint like one deal, but I can pinpoint me doing, you know, stuff not the right way and by hiring someone I don't know, you know, and let them walk on my project and screwing me over. I think I will never do that again.
Yeah, good one. Well, I always appreciate people who are willing to share the hard ones, right? The wins are easy to share, right?
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, what's number 3? What is one thing that you do that you feel like most other investors overlook?
I think to me, I'm very much a attention to detail kind of person. The name of the game in flipping is a lot of times just like in and out as fast as you can. And the faster you sell, obviously you save on some interest and all that. But to me, a lot of times it is worth to take a little extra time and maybe buy the nicer tile and, the attention to detail and get the finishes just right. Because it's kind of like my brand. I like to make it nice. And I think in the long run, actually, I think it's going to pay off because it sells faster. You build a reputation that you have a good product. So I think one thing I do that others might not is like really pay attention to the details.
Yeah, man. Great point. Not everybody has that skill set, but love that you built it out. Cool. Well, the fourth one's my favorite. I like to have people look. Again, I want you to look 5 years. The first one's a little bit easier. Like if you could go back and tell yourself, Mark, 5 years ago when he's still in the league, what would you tell him today? What's some advice you would give him, right? But then the second part's a little harder, right? I want you to try to picture in 5 years, right? So we're 2020. You now, Mark, who's got a big portfolio, doing Section 8, doing all this stuff across the country. Nice. What's that Mark going to give today's advice?
Okay. 5 years ago, obviously I tell them, it's like, get in the game, make a couple good plays on the football field, right?
Yeah.
But then also, no, honestly, and I think we kind of touched on it earlier, it's just like, get going, right? Like, even back then I was talking about it, but I hadn't taken the action yet, right? To like educate myself and taking steps to like, hey, set yourself up before once the career's over, right? Get in the game, right? Or like even like passive, get in a syndication deal or whatever, right? Like just get going. Like that's really the name of the game, right? When it comes to real estate. But then, for my future self, what would that tell me today? I think it would be along the lines of scale this thing, right? Partner with the right people, because we are in the process of actually getting into new builds as well. At the same time, we are doing a couple other businesses just to complement what we're doing on the flipping side. We want to do a roofing company. We just started a couple months ago, but we've done like 10 roofs so far. Like it's just something, just build that bigger, right? Like have the big vision, I think, or like great job on that vision. And then, I think it'd be one of those things, just like, just again, take the leap and good job that you did.
Heck yeah. It's similar advice, right? 5 years ago, get started. And now you're just saying, hey, have confidence.
Exactly. Probably 10 years from now, it's going to be the same thing. It's like, hey, get going. You have these ideas in your head. I mean, to that point, I want to get into lending as well. I have some connections there. And one of my buddies is a hard money lender. And he said he got started with less than you think. And he's doing really well in that business. And that's something that eventually down the line, I would love to get into as well. And, I'm sure 5 years from now, it's like, hey, you should have got into it 5 years ago.
You should have been lending first. That's right.
Exactly.
It is a natural progression, right?
Right.
Eventually stop having to do all the hard work. And now that you know how to underwrite deals, become a bank.
That's really what it is. Yeah. But a lot of possibilities.
Awesome, Mark. Well, good stuff, man. It's been fun to catch up. I think your story is super relatable. As I said at the beginning, I thought people might think they couldn't relate to you, but I think a lot of people can see themselves in you, in their W-2 today, and the steps you've taken. And then it's just a cool example for them to show, like, from like 0-1 or like from leaving W-2 to like now humming and going and now growing and scaling. It's such a good example. But Mark, man, where could people find you if they want to reach out, have questions, or want to partner on deals, or send you Section 8 deals?
So I have my wife, actually. She's running all our socials now. It's at MCN_properties. That is our business page. That is on TikTok, Instagram. And then my personal is Mark CN53 on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. You can reach out.
Awesome. Well, good. I have a lot of respect for Mark, everything he's done to this point, and he's a family man, does it all, man. Wakes up, gets his day started, and he's going to consistently keep doing it, man. So, Mark, appreciate you coming on. We'll wrap up with this, guys. Absolutely, Mark. All right, now, if you guys are doing this for more time, more freedom, and more options, don't let this just be another episode. Take action. Remember, even small moves today create the life your family will thank you for tomorrow.
If you're listening to this because you're chasing freedom, not just for yourself, but for your family, then don't let this just be the background noise. Take action. Shoot me a DM. Reach out. Find a property. Make a call. Remember, small moves today create the life your future self and your family will thank you for tomorrow.